Okay, so hello, my name is Laurel, and I'm going to be interviewing you today for the World Trade Center Oral History Project. So first, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview with me today. The purpose of this interview is to give you an opportunity to give your personal perspective and story of the World Trade Center disaster and your involvement with the rescue and recovery efforts that followed. By sharing your story, you will help us capture this historic event in a unique and personal way. We believe that the oral histories we gather will be invaluable to educators, researchers, and the public. And as you recount your story, please share as many details as possible. I know that some memories may be difficult to talk about, so I really do want to thank you so much for being willing to share your story with us. So would you be able to please just state and spell your first name for us?
My name is Mark Trippi,
Wonderful.
M-A-R-K-T-R-I-P-I.
Great, thank you. So the starting time is 10:20 a.m. So Mark, would you be able to just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you live, maybe a little bit about your family?
Okay, well, I live in Miller Place, New York on Long Island. I'm 63 years old. I'm coming up in 7 days will be my 40th wedding anniversary.
Wow, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I have two boys. One's 35 and one is 30. Both have good jobs, knock on wood. And I enjoy boating. I enjoy the family life, and I actually enjoy it a lot more after 9/11, after realizing what we have. So we do go out on a boat quite a bit. Actually, my job, I was a boat captain for many, many years, and that's where I actually feel the safest on a boat. Even during 9/11, that was my place of safety. So that's all I can think of right now.
Sure. So what was life like for you before 9/11? What were you doing at that time?
Well, I worked for the National Park Service. I actually had a number of jobs there. I worked at Fire Island National Seashore, 26 years. That was after I put in 4 years in the United States Coast Guard. At Fire Island, I started off as a boat captain. A boat operator was the actual job title. Then I was given a different job as a marine mechanic, but I was still able to do the boat operator job. So I had a couple of things going for me. And I really enjoyed it a lot. During that time, I built two steel vessels for the Park Service. And I was promoted to the foreman at one point. And during that time, I also knew the property disposal officer from the United States Coast Guard. So I was able to get surplus vessels from the Coast Guard for the Park Service, and not just Fire Island, but other parks. But actually, two of those vessels we did use on 9/11. So my job consisted of, as a boat operator, people would show up for work on the mainland in Patro for the most part, the work crew, and I would transport them to different spots on Fire Island, Sailor's Haven, Watch Hill. We maintained our own buoys for people to get into Fire Island facilities. We had a fleet of maybe 20 to 30 boats up from 17 feet to 60 feet.
Wow.
That I took care of. And it was just, you know what? It was a great job. I wasn't pigeonholed into doing one thing. I drove the boats. I fixed the boats. I fixed vehicles. I did a lot of different things that I really enjoyed doing. Met a lot of interesting people that would come. The superintendent, there were probably 5 superintendents during my time there. Some of them would have, high-profile visitors come over to stay on the beach. The superintendent had a house on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
There was a famous jazz player who I can't remember his name right now, but he showed up in a Ferrari. He stayed there. So it was a really cool job. In the fall, I love nature.
Mm-hmm.
In the fall, you have all these birds migrating from the north to the south. Snowy owls, peregrine falcons, so many small birds. It was just really a great place to work.
Mm-hmm.
You would never think, living so close to, the mainland or even to New York City, that such a wildlife spot could exist. And by the way, it probably has the best beach in the world.
Yeah.
They're really, really great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever gone there, but they're really good.
Yeah, I love it there. So what
Oh,
really
you've been?
made, yes, yeah. What made you get into boating? Was it something that you did as a child, or something as
Yeah.
an adult you figured out that you loved?
Well, when I was probably around the 8th grade, my dad purchased a boat.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 25-foot boat, and we put in just a few years, he put over 300 hours on it. We would go out. We kept the boat in Freeport, Long Island, and we would go out Jones Inlet, and we did all kinds of fishing. Now, the Coast Guard has a station at Short Beach, which is just inside of Jones Beach and on the bayside. So we would go and anchor there a lot, and just hang out. We'd actually barbecue on the boat, which was something that was just, I love the hamburgers, so we had a lot of those at the time. But I would see the Coast Guard guys going out, and I was really interested in that. You would see during that time, the Vietnam War was going on, and I really loved going out on the boat. And I also liked the fact that the Coast Guard guys were going out to save lives.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in high school, I decided to join the Coast Guard, and that's what I did. And it was one of the best decisions I've ever made, I think.
Mm-hmm.
With all the skills I learned, the cases. I had Walter Cronkite on the boat.
Wow.
I had, let's see, you heard of Jacques Cousteau?
Yes.
I didn't meet him, but his plane broke loose on the Hudson River, and I got to tow that in. So it was so many different experiences with that. And yeah, to this day, we're still boating family. And having the two boys, it didn't matter. I mean, if I had daughters, we would still have boats. And I think it gives them quite an experience just going out on a boat, whether or not they ever decide to have a boat. It's still a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So just going back to the time before, beginning with 9/11, what do you remember from that morning?
The morning of 9/11?
Yes.
Well, that morning, now you have to kind of picture this. Through the summer at Fire Island, it's crazy because everybody's off from school.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always rushing to make sure everything's okay for visitors, and it's just a hectic schedule. Once school starts, it's like boom, the everything's so nice, and the pace is relaxed. And that morning, 9/11, was just such a gorgeous sunny morning. It wasn't super hot, it wasn't humid, it was just a beautiful day. I had done the crew run, taking the people to the beach, brought some people back from the beach, and we were in Patchogue in our maintenance facility there when we actually got word that something happened in New York City. So we really didn't know what had happened, but that it didn't take too long to figure out. So at that point, we kind of stood around, I think, watching the TV, just wondering, well, geez, what's going on? And that's when our superintendent said he decided that he was going to send in 2 boats. And I had told you earlier how I had gotten surplus Coast Guard vessels. We had two 41-foot patrol boats that were ex-Coast Guard boats. So we went home, and our guys fueled up the boats and made sure they were ready to go. We went home to get all our, clothes, some extra clothes, and say goodbye to our family. And my wife was actually, she just retired as a teacher. Mm-hmm. So she was in school, and they were locked down in school. So we talked on a cell phone. She was pretty upset. I think by this point we all knew that it was a terrorist attack. Mm-hmm. So she was pretty upset and, didn't want me to go. But, I don't know if I thought how I could help at the time, but, having come from the Coast Guard, I always want to try and help. To this day, I want to help people. So anyway, got my stuff. We went back down to Patchogue. I met, we sent in two boats. Each boat had 4 people on it. And off we went. We headed into New York City. So we went to we had to stop at the Rockaway Coast Guard Station for something. I forget what for. So we stopped there, and I can remember there was, it was like, I don't know, confetti, cardboard, papers, stuff falling out of the sky. Still, this was hours after the towers fell. And I forget what time they fell and how many hours it was, but I was probably 4 or 5 hours after they actually collapsed. But there was stuff falling out of the sky still. It was just phenomenal. So we left there and we headed up to, the first place we went to was North Cove, North Cove was kind of like right near where the towers collapsed. And it was just a horrible scene. I actually ran into, when we got there was an Army Corps of Engineer boat, probably like 180 foot maybe. I forget how big it is. But the captain of that boat was in the Coast Guard with me. So I kind of I was talking with him for a little bit, and the rescue operation of taking people from there to New Jersey was winding down. So he finished up and he went on his way. We went into North Cove and docked there. And if I tell you that the place was covered with a foot of ash, a foot of dust and debris, it was, and you could see that it was just a disaster. I can't even describe to you. You've seen pictures of it, but, being there, seeing there's a famous picture, it's often online, of I think it's the outer skeleton of the building, like a stainless steel frame. I was right there. I could see that. And it was just, I knew something really bad happened. I couldn't fathom what happened.
And what were you thinking, having seen, this outer skeleton of such a monumental building at all?
I was thinking that, when these things collapsed, I know there was people in it, and I know there's people in that ash. There's remains in there. I really didn't want to trample over it. I didn't. I think it was something so big that I couldn't wrap my head around it. The extent of what happened, I don't think registered yet. So, we stayed there a little bit, but our main function was to provide security at the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. Now, if, as stupid as it sounds now, or maybe it doesn't to some people, but at the time we were kind of thinking we were going to war or something. We didn't know. Out of the 2 boats that we sent in, one of them was loaded with first aid supplies. My boat had weapons on it. I had two Rangers, John and Jay, and Steve was helping me secure the boat and operate the boat. So, but we had weapons, and our job, like I said, was security, and we established a perimeter around around Liberty Island and around Ellis Island, and would not let vessels come inside that because we didn't know. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was one guy, and again, you have to think back to the time. There was a guy who came up from the south, probably from, I don't know, maybe down towards Bayonne, New Jersey, heading up. He was probably heading up to the site to, I don't know, maybe he could have been a reporter, newspaper guy. Maybe he was just somebody who wanted to see what was happening. I don't know. But my job was to not let these people by. I don't know how close that guy came to getting shot, because I went after him, and to keep him from coming across where he wanted to. One of the Rangers was on the bow of the boat with an M16 pointed at this guy, and he could have been, I'm sure it was a very innocent thing, but at the time, who knew? Mm-hmm. So, and then we actually stayed at Ellis Island, and I don't know who the concessionaire was who ran the cafeteria, but they took care of us. They were very good. I slept on the boat, and Steve slept on the boat. John and Jay, there was quarters there for them to sleep in. Mm-hmm. And we would spend most of the days patrolling the area. Sometimes we would go up to North Cove and see if there was anything we could do to help out. But for the most part, it was security. We'd get back, and we would stay. At the end of the day, we'd tie up at Ellis Island. There was always food for us, and we would stop in for lunch maybe too sometimes. But I was kind of, all of us there were very sheltered from the public response outside of that area. Mm-hmm. So that was, I think I was there for a week. We were there for a week. Steve actually got sick from the dust at that time and had to leave. There was still dust in the air going, floating around. Mm-hmm. At nighttime, there was the strangest thing. And I asked some of the guys if they had the same reaction, but you could look over to where the Twin Towers were. And there was actually to me and to the other people, it seemed like there was a shadow of where the towers were. So it was almost like a negative. If it was a negative, you'd see white during the daytime and black at nighttime. It was. I'm not explaining that right, but there were shadows. It was like the towers, a ghost of the towers was there. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was just a mental thing. I don't know. Maybe the city was just lit up more. But it was really a strange thing. And, at one point we would be tied up on the backside of Ellis Island because they were afraid that people would swim across and try and blow up stuff. We did have a bomb scare at 3:00 in the morning at the Statue of Liberty that we responded to. So the guys, John and Jay, the two Rangers, came down to the boat and said, there's a bomb at the Statue of Liberty. So I started the boat and, full speed ahead right out of Ellis Island. We went over to the statue. It turned out it was nothing, but believe it or not, that bomb scare at 3 a.m. Has remained with me all this time, because in 2006, my heart stopped and I got a pacemaker. And, this is attributed to that. I have had nightmares. I woke up at 3:00 in the morning for many years, exactly at 3 o'clock in the morning, screaming. And that's what it was from. And finally, with the pacemaker, the cardiologist every 3 months gets a download of information from the pacemaker. And he would ask me, what are you doing at 3 o'clock in the morning? I'm kind of like, what is he getting at here? And I said, Doc, I wake up at 3 in the morning. I have nightmares. And it took him a number of years. And finally he said, I believe you, because information is coming out more and more about the people who've responded to 9/11 and what they've gone through. So that, he finally saw it, that something is staying with me like that.
Yeah.
It's gotten better, but so anyway, after that, after 9/11, we left there about a week later, and it was kind of there were a lot of rain showers that day that we left. The sun would come out, but there would be rain. So we left maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to guess. And we sailed back, and we came in through Fire Island Inlet, and it was the first time in my life I'd ever seen a double rainbow as we were coming in. I'd never seen that before. So I think I dropped off Jay at the Fire Island Coast Guard station, and then we went back to Patchogue, and the chief ranger met us at the boat. Dave, he met us at the dock and welcomed us home and everything. And we said our goodbyes, and I was driving home, and I was leaving Patchogue, and I saw, we're still light out. There were, I don't know how many people standing on the road in front of a church with candles, like a candlelight vigil. And it just made me realize, excuse me for a second. I didn't think this would happen.
No, it's okay.
Anyway, so I came home, and it was great to see my family again. So that was that week. Hold on.
Yeah, I know that you said before that you guys were all a little bit sheltered from what had been going on, off of the boats. Were you able to call your family during this time?
I don't remember if I even tried. I must have, but I don't remember. We didn't spend a lot of time hanging out. It was out on the boat a lot, and even if I had my cell phone, I don't remember having a charger.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, I'm not even sure what kind of cell phone we had back then. I'm pretty sure it wasn't an iPhone. It was probably just I think I might have had a Nokia. I don't remember making calls. Maybe I made a couple on a payphone. If people even remember what a payphone is, back then. But yeah, it was great to get home and see them, and that's when it was weird when, just fast forward to now with the pandemic that's going on, that we didn't when the pandemic first started, and I really didn't know what the heck they were talking about. Now this is going to sound strange. My sister lives out on the West Coast, and she called me one day and said, "Can you get toilet paper?" And I was like, what are you talking about? Of course we can get toilet paper. Go to the store. So we can't get toilet paper. We can't get bottled water. And, I thought she was kind of nuts. But I went maybe 2 or 3 days later. My wife and I walked into the local Stop and Shop. Empty. no meat, no toilet paper, no nothing. And I said something to Kathy, my wife, and she said, this is exactly how it was the first days at 9/11. So I didn't know that at all. Now she said 9/11 got better real quick. You know, that the supplies and stuff, the hoarding. But so I kind of understand what people went through there. All my needs were when on the boat was to make sure that the crew and myself and the boat stayed safe and operational, and protect what we were tasked to protect. So, so that's my 9/11 week story. But I will say, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go on. Go on.
No, I was going to say that it stays with you for a long time. And there's a Bruce Springsteen song, "The Rising." I don't know if you've ever listened to it, but I listened to that song. It took me, I don't know, 7-8 years before I could actually say all the words to it. So maybe after 9/11, I'm more into music too. It just seems to be, I actually do sit at the computer quite a bit and listen to songs, download, get some new songs and stuff. So what were you going to ask?
Oh, I was just going to add, during that week, what do you think is the most impactful thing, or the thing that, you think has really stayed with you the most, nearly 19 years later?
Well, there's some good that I got out of it, and there's also some things that impacted me really quite a bit. The good, I would say, is one, realizing how important my family is to me. The fact that the people of our country were able to come together so quickly and so strongly compared to today, where it just seems like our country is split in half, and there's no tolerance anymore. And I don't want to get into the political side of it, so I'll just leave it at that. But I think the way the men, and there was a lady on the other boat too, how we all worked together and overcame. We're going to be on a boat for 8 to 10, 12 hours a day. You can kind of get on each other's nerves a little bit, but we didn't. We came together very, very, it was good. It was an example of how people should be together. And one of the bad things was, now, I think I told you before, I was a first responder to Flight 800, which was in 1997. That night, and for about a week after that, I was out there too. And then then 9/11, and then after 9/11, a bunch of things happened. My mother-in-law passed away, and she was a fantastic lady. I loved her. I loved her quite a bit. A friend passed away at work, a coworker. And then another coworker came down with cancer. So combine all of that with my PTSD, which I still hadn't been diagnosed with, and not sleeping. I was having these nightmares, 3 o'clock in the morning. I went for about, this is no joke, a week with no sleep. And still, I had a hard time going to work and everything. So I woke up one morning, I grabbed a bottle of pills, and I went to a spot on Long Island and was writing suicide notes for my wife and for my friend Steve. Well, when I didn't show up at work, Steve called my house, and Kathy flipped out, and Steve said, "Don't worry, I bet I know where he is." And so Steve found me. I hadn't taken any pills, but I was in bad shape. So, that took a little time in the hospital, some therapy, and, it was just, I don't know, why I would do something like that, but that is when I got better, that I realized what I would have done to my family by doing that. And I would never do that. I just, that is something I would never want to do. So it's taken some time to get over that. And every day it seems like another spark ignites, and I think of more good things, and I do more good projects, and I'm, more involved. So there's just something to, watch out for. And I've avoided talking about 9/11 for a long time. And, it was finally, I guess, I don't know who contacted me, and my wife found out about it. And she said, maybe it'd be a good idea if you would give it a shot. So here I am. I hope that answered your question as far as the good and the bad.
Yes, it did.
But there's a lot more good.
I think that's such a great outlook to have, that I think in any situation people can always find far more bad than good. And I think in times like 9/11 or what we're going through now with this pandemic, it's so important to continue, to find the good things.
Well, I think if you dwell on the bad, it leads you down a rabbit hole that you don't want to go down. I'm not one of those sunshine people, but I try and be a realist, but at the same time, I also try not to harp on the bad. So if my boys ever watch this in the future, take that to heart, Mark and Eric.
Absolutely. So, speaking of your children, have you been able to, speak with them about, what your duties were around 9/11, or, what that time was like for you?
We never really sat down and discussed it, because again, it's something that's hard for me to talk about. Now, I've also, my one son, my oldest boy, went to federal law enforcement training down in Georgia. He had a job with the Secret Service, so he was down there. And one of his instructors, it's like such a small world, one of his instructors was in the Coast Guard with me. Now, we had lost touch way back in 1980, let's say. Well, Brian was his instructor. And we kind of emailed back and forth, and Brian said, "Listen, are you coming down for his graduation?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "Well, let's get together." Now, we only had when he did graduate, we would only have a little time, because Mark had to be back up in DC, within 2 days. So it was like a quick thing. So anyway, we went to the graduation, and it was kind of like in a little chapel, the graduation. So now remember, I haven't seen Brian in many years, 1980. So I'm sitting in the chapel, and I know he's going to come in. And he was also going to bring his wife, who I knew also. So I'm sitting in one of the pews, and I feel a presence over to my left side in the aisle. And I look over, and I see this old man looking at me. It was Brian. And he looked at me, and he yelled at me. Well, he didn't yell, but "You got old too," he said. you have to remember when we were together, we were both like 20, 21 years, even 18 together. But so we had a quick, after the graduation, we went, I forget where, we had a lunch someplace with Mark and Brian and his wife, Debbie. And it was nice getting in touch with Brian, and Mark got a little bit of info from Brian about the Coast Guard. And, you know, Brian and I were actually on the same boat. He was the what's called the coxswain, the guy who drove the boat, and I was the engineer on the boat. And we did many cases together. But Brian was also at 9/11. And Brian got pancreatic cancer from 9/11. And he died just a few years ago. And
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But at least I was able to be back in touch with him.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually has a brother who was also in the Coast Guard with us. So I've been able to, we kind of like reconnected with him too a little bit. And we were actually planning on taking our boat back towards the Coast Guard station to meet him. But what's going on now, pandemic has put a kibosh on that anyway for some time. But I've known a few other guys who have also gotten different cancers. I've had skin cancer from it, melanoma, and I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones. My wife works with other teachers whose husbands were police officers who were there, and you know, they've had all kinds of issues with it. And it just seems like the longer it goes on, the more things are popping up with people. So your original question was, have I sat down and talked with my boys about it? And I have a little bit. I actually had to get a letter from the Park Service when I worked there to get some benefits from it. And I let the boys read the letter, so they, you know, because it kind of described what we did at 9/11. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I would do it again if I had to. I would just, you know, it's the way I am. I want to help. Mm-hmm. So.
Absolutely. And just, you know, when you spoke about some of the people that you've known who have gotten cancers from their exposure at 9/11, were you, you know, aware or, you know, what were you thinking, you know, last year around this time with everything, you know, happening about the passing of the new renewal for the VCF, or everything, you know, going on for the benefits for 9/11 first responders?
The guys the people, the men and women that responded to 9/11 did so out of their commitment to helping people, I believe. And I think that enough cannot be done to help those people, mm-hmm. To help us. You know, we went there, we didn't ask for anything in return. And whether you got something from the VCF or not, I think everybody would still go there. One of the reasons earlier when I talked about the being in North Cove and seeing the debris from the buildings, the foot of ash and concrete and glass, I just felt that this is not good to breathe in. You know, in my job, you know, I would fix fiberglass or grind steel and, you know, do different things. I always had a face mask on. And I just felt that this cannot be good, this stuff. And one of the guys, John, one of the Rangers, he has silica particles embedded in his sinus cavity, and I don't think there's a way to get it out. So he's got something going on. That's a relatively new discovery, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I knew it was not something that you wanted to breathe in. But again, those benefits can really help.
Mm-hmm.
After I tried suicide, that was it. That was the last day of work for me. So I have been since 2004 out of work. I mean, I do have benefits. It's kind of tough with a pacemaker because I try and do a normal routine and try and, move about and not let it limit me. However, I could be talking to you and say, something, Laurel, I got to go take a nap. I mean, it can hit just boom like that. It's vagal syncope where my heart rate just wants to drop to nothing. That's why I have a pacemaker. So, I probably could have worked. If I had worked another 5 years, I could have retired normally with 37 years working for the government, but I couldn't. So, once I got the pacemaker, I lost my captain's license because, you have to pass certain physical standards. So thank God for those benefits is all I can say. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, one of the guys, Jay, maybe he'll see this one day, every year I would ask him, did you enroll in the World Trade Center Health Program? No. And I kept saying, you better do it. No, there's nothing wrong. I said, yeah, there's nothing wrong now, but it could happen. I think last year he finally registered. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's because I told him about the VCF. I don't know if it actually, came down to money, but at least he registered. And, thank God for you people, because going there every year, except for this year, and getting checked, the chest x-rays, all that stuff. Thank you. Thank you guys.
Well, all we really want to do is just thank you and thank the responders. We're so appreciative for what you all have done, that you make our jobs not only easy, but such a privilege.
Oh, you're too nice. You're too nice. I know we have to be a pain in the neck sometimes.
Not at all. Not at all. So I know that you said, from being in the Coast Guard, and even saying now, regardless of everything that has happened in the past 19 years, you would still go back and do it again. What has motivated you to just always want to go out and help people?
Wow, that's a good question. I think it might have to do with me as a person. Just like I don't want to squash a bug if I don't have to. I really like life, but I've always been like that, even as a kid. Actually, very young age, I got a pellet gun, and I would go out in the back and shoot little model airplanes and shoot little soldiers and, play that game. And one day I shot a bird, and I went out and saw that bird lying on the ground. I mean, it was still alive, but had a hole in its chest. It did fly away. I don't know what happened to it, but when I saw that bird on the ground, I started crying. So I think that it just kind of gives you an idea that I value life. I wouldn't say I'm a weak person. Maybe there's rough and tough people that think, you got to do that. And, thank God there are hunters, because I do like hamburgers, and people who can kill a cow and do these things. I can't do it. So when I see people in trouble, I want to help. And I have to say, I think it's gotten even stronger after 9/11. Empathy. I think I have a lot of empathy towards people who need help, which I don't know if that's a response from that or just as I've gotten older.
Mhm.
But, you know, seeing those guys in the Coast Guard when I was a kid made a big impression. One, they were going out on a boat getting paid. What could be better than that? You know? So, and they were saving people. So I think that it was a great decision. I learned a lot of skills that I went to a bunch of schools in the service, and it just really helped. Really, it was a good life. It's a good life.
Absolutely. So, as we begin to get to the close of our interview, I want to just ask, since these stories that we're documenting in these interviews will ultimately be archived in the Library of Congress and then be made available to the public, is there anything that you might want someone 20, 50, or 100 years from now to know about the disaster or your experience?
Well, I think that I would say to people who are in charge to not let your guard down. In fact, my one son, I can't say who he works for, but I think his job is to help keep people who would want to do harm to Americans out of this country and off of airplanes coming here. I'm not sure. He's never told me, so he can't get in trouble. I'm just trying to piece together what he does. So I think you have to take threats seriously, not let your guard down. At the same time, by doing that, it lets citizens enjoy life. If they know that they're secure, they can have a good life. If they have to worry about whether it's a guy flying an airplane into a building or getting tested for a virus that someone takes seriously and somebody doesn't take seriously, you have to take these things seriously. I think that's what I'd like to say. I think that, not to be political or anything, I think that all citizens of the United States should spend some time in a service to the United States. Whether it's a military branch, and I'm not saying for 4 years or 2 years, maybe a year, maybe 6 months, maybe something like AmeriCare, where they might go out and help clean up a town or city, from trash. And the reason I say that is because having been through even boot camp and learning to work with people from all different backgrounds, races, economic backgrounds, whatever it is, if you don't work together, you don't get it done. It doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
But in the service, it really worked. I worked with all kinds of people, black, white, yellow. People who never saw snow before. It didn't matter. People who came from rich, people who were poor. And we worked together. So I think that's an important thing to do.
Okay. So has this interview captured everything that you've wanted to talk about? Did we miss anything?
Listen, I went into this totally winging it. I didn't know how it would go. I didn't know, how in depth you would want to go, or I think it did pretty good. I don't know. You're the director, you tell me.
Well, I just really do want to thank you again so much for taking the time to do this interview with me and to share your unique story with us. I certainly appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I know that you've said you've thought about this for a while now, and that I really do thank you for being willing
You don't have
to do this.
You're welcome. You're quite welcome.
Okay.
So now what happens?
So this concludes our interview with Mark, and our ending time is 11:09.